Okay, so a brief presentation. So our presenters here. So we have Jeff Bisanz. He is a professor emeritus at the Department of Psychology at the University of Alberta, where the focus of his research was on cognitive development in children. He is a member of the Edmonton Council for Early Learning and Care and the steering committee for the Community University Partnership for the Study of Children, Youth, and Families, and on the board of directors for the Mutar Foundation. We also have Lauren Lees, and she is a policy and evaluation research assistant at the Community University Partnership for the Study of Children, Youth, and Families at the University of Alberta. She holds a Master's of Public Health from Queen's University, and her current work focuses on the well-being of children and families through the early learning and childcare. So with these introductions, I am now going to hand it over to our guests.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present our findings from the Alberta Parent Survey on early learning and care. Here comes the slides. The survey was conducted in 2022 and was a joint product of the Edmonton Council for Early Learning and Care, the Mutar Foundation, and the Community University Partnership for the Study of Children, Youth, and Families, which is known as CUP. Our presentation today is based on the last two reports in a series about this survey. Our team consists of Lauren Lees, Mackenzie Martin, and Ping Lam Ip, all three of whom are researchers at CUP, and also Christopher Smith at the Mutar Foundation, and me. I'm with the Edmonton Council for Early Learning and Care. This is our second presentation with Childcare Now Alberta on this work. We're pleased to have such a great group of participants from the early learning and care community with us today. We look forward to any questions you might have. We also look forward to hearing any suggestions you might have for us for future work. Next slide. There we go. Here's our agenda for today. We will describe some of the context for this work and our survey, and we will report selected findings and our recommendations about two topics, cultural relevance and flexibility. Then we will talk about some next steps. First, a bit of context, which will be familiar to most of you. Remember, in 2017, the federal government and all the provincial ministers and territorial ministers, including Alberta's, agreed to a multicultural early learning and childcare framework with specific principles about what they wanted to see, what everyone wants to see in a national childcare program. Money became available in the federal budget in 2021. After that, the federal and provincial bilateral agreements began to be signed beginning in 2021. And finally, in Alberta, the cost control framework and for-profit expansion plan was established and was created in 2023. This is a very high-level plan for implementation. Those of you who have read it know that it's full of ambiguities, and I'm sure the good people at Jobs, Economy, and Trade are laboring over how to make this plan work. If all of this is to be successful, it has to work for parents. Certainly, input from parents should be useful as a system of early learning and care evolves in Alberta. In the original framework, the 5 principles were cited as being critical for designing systems of early learning and childcare: quality, affordability, accessibility, inclusivity, and flexibility. We've organized our analyses of the survey around these principles. We've presented earlier our results about affordability and accessibility. Today, we focus on one aspect of inclusivity, cultural relevance, as well as flexibility. Excuse me. Now, just a little background about the survey. It was funded by the Edmonton Council for Early Learning and Care and the Mutar Foundation, and it was more or less powered by CUP. It was designed primarily by Rob Bushman and Jennifer Fisher-Summers at CUP, who have since moved on to other positions. And so the current team has taken up the challenge of analyzing and interpreting the results. Participants in the survey included over 1,400 parents who were recruited from a large panel of Albertans. The survey was conducted during the spring of 2022, about 5 months after the new program for subsidies and affordability grants was implemented. The primary goal at the time was to reduce average parent fees by 50%. In our analyses, we looked to see if our results varied by location, annual household income, number of parents in the family, and subsidy status. We start with cultural relevance. Due to limitations of our data, we chose to look at only one aspect of inclusivity, cultural relevance, which we defined as being respectful of and responsive to the diverse values, beliefs, behaviors, and knowledge systems held by families and various social and ethnic groups. We had wanted to explore parents' views on other aspects of inclusivity, such as inclusion for children with disabilities, but the questions on the survey just did not allow for the kind of analysis that would be needed. But we could get some results about cultural relevance. We all can ask, as a system of early learning and childcare grows in Alberta, why should we be thinking about cultural relevance? Well, first, consistent with the multilateral framework, our province is committed to a system that will support the full range of Alberta families. As you know, in Alberta, the full range includes lots of diversity. For example, according to the 2021 census, almost 7% of Alberta's population were Indigenous, another 28% were classified as visible minorities, and 23% reported a first language other than English. So those are substantial numbers. Second, if we are to support the full range of Alberta families, then our early learning and childcare must adapt to those families. Why? Well, common finding from international research is that children from low-income and ethnic minority families are less often enrolled in early learning and childcare than other children. Several barriers have been identified, including cost and accessibility, but also difficulty in finding programs that meet families' cultural needs and preferences. In Edmonton, for example, in studies conducted by the Edmonton Council, parents and caregivers of Indigenous, immigrant, and refugee children have identified the many challenges they face in finding early learning and care, including the lack of language supports for children and their parents, familiar cultural practices, staff with cultural knowledge and sensitivities, and a sense of cultural safety. Third, equitable access to early learning and care for the full range of Alberta families is important because high quality, affordable early learning and care can contribute to reducing poverty, promoting well-being and positive developmental outcomes in children, and enabling parents, especially women, to advance their education and seek employment outside the home. Certainly, these are outcomes that we all want to be available for our children and families. If Alberta's evolving early learning and care system is to be a success, then it must be designed to support cultural relevance. Now, what do parents think about cultural relevance in early learning and care? The first question we addressed was, is cultural relevance important to parents when making decisions about early learning and care? We had two ways to address the question. In the first, 11% of parents selected the ability to provide culturally relevant care for child or family as a top 3 reason for choosing their current childcare arrangement. By the way, cultural relevance was listed more frequently by parents from lower income families than by parents from higher income families, and more often by parents who had identified ethnically as something other than white than by parents who identified as white. The second finding in this case again, 14% of parents selected cultural relevance as one of the most important factors if they were able to access any childcare arrangement. In this case again, cultural relevance was listed more often by non-white parents than white parents. In a separate survey question, parents were asked to describe what high quality looks like. Some parents wrote about cultural relevance when describing high quality. For example, they referred to childcare that, quote, aligns with our beliefs and values, childcare that promotes diversity and inclusivity, childcare that shares cultures and traditions from folks from our community and around the world, and childcare that supports my family's religious beliefs and is religiously and culturally appropriate for my child. We managed to gain a couple of other insights about parents' views on cultural relevance. Some parents, as you can see from the top half of the slide, some parents in our sample reported difficulty finding childcare in the past 3 months. Of these parents, some had difficulty finding childcare that was culturally relevant for their child or family. And some parents, the bottom half of the screen, some parents in our sample reported that they had decided not to use childcare for various reasons. About 1 in 11 indicated that childcare is not culturally relevant or culturally appropriate for the child or family. So, given the diverse population in Alberta, it's not surprising that some parents seek cultural relevance in early learning and childcare. Just what it is about cultural relevance that makes it important probably varies from parent to parent. So what did we learn from this survey? First, in our survey, approximately 1 in 10 parents identified relevance as a top 3 factor when choosing their current childcare arrangement, and the percentage for non-white parents was more than double that for white parents. Second, about 1 in 7 parents identified cultural relevance as a top 3 factor in selecting any childcare arrangement. Again, the percentage was more than double for non-white parents compared to white parents. Third, cultural relevance was an important concern for some of the parents who had difficulty finding early learning and care. And by the way, the consequences were considerable for these parents who had difficulty finding childcare. Half experienced various kinds of disruption to their employment and/or they gave up looking for childcare altogether. And fourth, the lack of cultural relevance was cited by about 1 in 11 parents as a reason for not using early learning and childcare. So clearly there's a lot of interest in cultural relevance on the views of parents. So where are we in Alberta in respect to ensuring that cultural relevance is part of the evolving design of our early learning and childcare system? Well, I refer you to the report because we have lots of details in there. But in brief, so far, there is very little to nothing in legislation and regulation to provide explicit guidance and standards about cultural relevance. On the positive side, the provincial government is implementing a number of initiatives and exploring more that are likely to be helpful. What's lacking, though, is a clear vision for what cultural relevance should look like in Alberta, and a clear plan for implementing that vision, and a means for evaluating whether we're making good progress. With these concerns in mind, we have 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is the vision part. I'll pause while you take a look at it. What should cultural relevance look like in Alberta, given the diversity of our families and also the diversity of our childcare centers, family day homes, and preschools? Answering this question with explicit goals will be tricky. In our report, we identify a number of important issues that should be addressed in coming up with this vision. Next, there needs to be an explicit plan or strategy for implementing the vision and reaching the goals. In our report, we identify a long list of components that such a plan could have, based on what has been done elsewhere in Canada and around the world. And finally, we need good data. We need systems for monitoring changes, and we need research and evaluation all the way along so that we can tell whether we're making good progress, not just in terms of counting heads, but in terms of what makes a difference in the well-being of young children and their families. The report, summary, and infographic are all available on the website for the Edmonton Council for Early Learning and Care. The link is at the bottom of this slide. In a way, this presentation is a tease for those of you who are interested and who would like to read the details of our findings and recommendations. I now turn it over to Lauren for the rest of our presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. So we will now talk about parents' views and preferences about flexibility in early learning and childcare in Alberta. And while there are many definitions and components of flexible early learning and childcare, such as on-demand or drop-in care, our survey was only designed to identify one aspect of flexibility, which is the hours of operation. And so for our purposes of this report, we define flexible early learning and childcare as care that is available overnight, on weekends, and before 6 a.m. or after 6 p.m. on weekdays, as well as half-day care or care for a few hours, as these represent non-standard arrangements. And access to flexible early learning and childcare is especially important for parents who work non-standard schedules, which include non-standard hours, irregular schedules, or part-time work. These schedules are common in Canada, and existing options for childcare in Alberta often do not meet the needs of these parents. For example, many childcare centres have limited options for half-day care or care for a few hours, while most kindergarten programs in Alberta are operated on a half-day basis, leaving parents in need of additional care for the rest of the day. And for centres to receive the Government of Alberta's Affordability Grant, which reduces childcare fees for parents, children in part-time care must be enrolled for at least 50 hours per month, which is more than some parents require. So due to the uncertain nature of their work schedules, parents who are unable to find early learning and childcare that meets their needs may be discouraged from entering, returning, or remaining in the workforce. And when parents cannot find flexible childcare, they may also sacrifice other important aspects such as affordability, accessibility, quality, and inclusivity in order to meet their childcare needs. So with this survey, similar to cultural relevance, we looked at parents' views on flexibility in several ways. First, are parents using flexible early learning and childcare arrangements? In the past 3 months, almost 3/4 of parents reported using a childcare arrangement. Among these parents, approximately 1/3 used a flexible arrangement. And as you can see on the table, more parents who reported using childcare in the past 3 months used a flexible arrangement on weekends than on weekdays. The use of flexible early learning and childcare was especially common among families with lower annual household incomes. Second, what types of flexible early learning and childcare arrangements did parents most commonly use? We found that the majority of parents who had used flexible childcare in the past 3 months reported using a childcare by a relative other than a parent or guardian. Other types of care were not as common. For example, only 17% of parents who used flexible childcare in the past 3 months used a daycare or childcare center, and only 11% reported using a day home. Next, we looked at if the operating hours of early learning and childcare are important to parents. So over 1/4 of parents ranked the hours provided by the arrangement as one of the most important factors if they were able to access any childcare arrangement. Similarly, over 1/4 of parents ranked the hours of operation as a top 3 reason for choosing their current childcare arrangement, both of which indicate that yes, operating hours are important to parents. We then looked at what are parents' preferred childcare schedules, and at least 1/4 of all parents reported that their preferred childcare schedule would include a flexible arrangement. We say at least 25%, as the survey options did not specifically include morning care before 6 a.m. during weekdays. And so this 25% number may underestimate the true number of parents who preferred flexible arrangements. But more specifically, on our survey, 1 in 7 parents selected half-day care during weekdays, 1 in 8 selected childcare on weekends, and 1 in 20 selected overnight care. Next, we looked at, do parents have difficulty finding early learning and childcare that fits their family schedule? And if so, what are the impacts? So nearly 1/3 of parents reported difficulty finding childcare in the past 3 months. Among these parents, almost half reported difficulty in finding childcare that fit their family's work or study schedules. Parents who reported difficulty in finding childcare that met their schedules experienced various consequences. For example, almost 2/3 changed their work schedules, over half worked fewer hours than they would have otherwise, and nearly 1/3 gave up looking for childcare altogether. Lastly, do parents have concerns about the flexibility of early learning and childcare in their community neighborhood, or area. 10% of parents indicated that they had concerns about the hours of childcare in their community. One-parent families were more likely to have concerns about the hours of operation not being convenient than two-parent families. And so what does this mean? The results demonstrate that flexible early learning and childcare is important to Alberta parents. Many parents, especially low-income parents, reported using flexible childcare arrangements. Parents reported that the hours of operation were highly important in making decisions about their childcare arrangements, and that they had difficulty finding childcare that fit their family schedules. These difficulties had various impacts, such as working fewer hours, postponing or discontinuing work, and giving up looking for childcare altogether. So these results underscore the importance of policies that reflect the diversity and complexity of families in Alberta, and the importance of including flexibility in policy documents where it does not currently appear, such as in Alberta's new Early Learning and Childcare Vision and the Cost Control Framework and For-Profit Expansion Plan, which leads us into our 4 recommendations. So I'll go over these recommendations briefly, but more details can be found in the report if you are interested. So first, to ensure that the future early learning and childcare system is equitable, it should support all parents, including those who work non-standard schedules. To improve options for families who need it, strategies need to be explored to enhance the availability of flexible childcare without compromising the other principles of affordability, accessibility, quality, and inclusivity. This process should involve engaging with a diverse range of stakeholders, such as childcare providers, parents, employers, and researchers who can all offer valuable insights into early learning and childcare and family needs. And second, when implementing flexible early learning and childcare, it is also important to consider whether specific arrangements such as overnight childcare are particularly beneficial for children's well-being. And so parents require the ability to work to afford life's necessities, often requiring extended hours of childcare, while children need quality time with their parents or caregivers in order to thrive. So thoughtful policies must therefore address these competing needs, ensuring that flexible early learning and childcare options support both parental employment and child development without compromising the health and safety of children. To do this, the government should consider a full suite of policies to support the provision of flexible early learning and childcare, including employment and family policies similar to other countries. For instance, implementing upstream approaches such as better parental leave policies, providing sick days or family care responsibility days, or accommodating flexible schedules for parents of young children may reduce the onus on early learning and childcare to continuously adapt to family challenges and the shortcomings of employment policies. Next, the provincial government should consider establishing comprehensive regulations for extended and overnight childcare in all early learning and childcare centers, including at minimum the number of hours a child can be in care, the staff-to-child ratios required, the certification level of the staff present, sleeping arrangement requirements, and health and hygiene requirements, because currently these important aspects are not covered by the Alberta Early Learning and Childcare Regulation, while they are included in the Family Day Home Standards Manual for Alberta. And lastly, the provincial government should seek to understand why parents would prefer flexible childcare arrangements, why parents prefer to use informal childcare arrangements instead of formal early learning and childcare, and the specific types of flexible childcare parents need, such as extended hours, overnight, or drop-in care, as well as their preferred locations within Alberta. This understanding will help the government target efforts to increase flexible early learning and childcare effectively, potentially by creating designated spaces or by providing additional funding to address operational and administrative costs. So similar to cultural relevance, this report, the summary, and the infographic on the slide are all available on the CWELCC website, which is linked at the bottom of the slide. And so for next steps, we are currently analyzing parent responses about what quality early learning and childcare looks like to them. So we hope to publish a paper on these findings in the new year. In addition, on September 26th this year, we hosted a Knowledge to Action workshop where we discussed the findings from our survey reports and worked with approximately 29 stakeholders to develop recommendations for early learning and childcare moving forwards. And so we're currently developing a What We Heard report based on the recommendations in the session, and this will be shared widely amongst the community once it's published. And so to wrap things up, our survey results are important as they give parents a voice as we can make changes to early learning and childcare in the province. They provide valuable information for decision-making by including local information from parents in Alberta. We also provide recommendations which can be used to move certain actions forward in early learning and childcare. And finally, the results can be a springboard for future exploration. So we just want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this webinar today. We appreciate the opportunity to share the results of our work and would be happy to answer any questions you have, either in the Q&A after this session or by the emails listed in this slide. And the QR code on the right will take you also directly to our publications.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I'm just gonna stop the recording there for folks.